Docker is an incredible tool. But if you're new to Docker, or maybe you're slightly experienced but you don't use it very often, it can be easy to make mistakes that can waste time, cause confusion, or even lead to data loss. So whether you're just getting started or you've been using Docker for a while and you're someone that's comfortable with it, I'm going to cover 4 common commands that a lot of people get wrong, and everybody can get tripped up by these. But don't worry, I'll show you exactly how to fix them. So mistake number 1, we run a container with the D flag and then wondering why you can't see the output. What's going on? And what's going on here is that by running the D flag, you're running the container in the background, which means detached mode. So you won't see any logs or errors. And if you're a beginner and you run the command with a D flag, you might assume something's broken when nothing appears on the screen. I run my command, there's nothing going on, something must be broken. But that's okay. All it means is you're almost running it in silent mode and it's just running in the background. For instance, I could run a test container and I could run it with a D flag. Let's say that container is going to be a web server essentially. So I'll use Docker run my D flag. Let's give the name for this test nginx. We'll use the nginx image that I've already pulled. I'll hit run. There we go, and I'll now run my docker ps command and we will see that it is running, and here is my container image. Now, what can I do to verify this is all working as I'd expect? Well, the container is obviously running, we know that it's running, but if we want to check on the logs, we can simply use the docker logs command. So if we run it in detached mode, we're running it silently, we want to get in and figure out what's going on, we can simply copy our number there and we can say docker logs for the number, and we can then see and verify that everything is working as expected. Excellent. Of course, you also have the option of running in interactive mode, and you could go in there and do some interactive mode for debugging if you need to. But essentially, when you use the D flag, don't worry, it isn't broken, isn't hung, nothing's gone wrong. You just run it silently, and you can check on it by either dialing into it interactively or checking on the logs. So mistake number 2 would be using Docker kill when you probably should be using Docker stop. Now, Docker kill immediately stops the container because of all processes without cleanup. Now, this is fine if the container has stopped or it's hung or something isn't working properly, you just need to force to close that container. Great, Docker kill is the way to go. If you're just closing your container down, you should be using Docker stop to send a SIG-term signal allowing a graceful shutdown, okay? So it's a bit like actually clicking shutdown rather than holding down the power button and cutting off the power immediately to your container. So obviously there's a time and a place for that, but in general use, if everything's working fine, Docker stop is the way to go. So for instance, I have a container called test nginx that's running. I could use Docker kill for that, but the more appropriate way to shut that down, assuming it's working fine, would be Docker stop. I'd hit Docker stop and it would shut that container down for me. That's what I should be using. If I want to restart it, I can obviously use start and I can get back in there, but by using stop instead of kill, there will be no data loss. It would have been shut down gracefully, so everything should be working as I expect when I restart this container. Okay, excellent. Now, let's talk about the situation when you try to run bash, but it doesn't exist. Okay, so let's say you've got a Docker container using a lightweight container like Alpine Linux, and you try to dial in interactively to this using bash. Well, the problem is bash won't be found because minimal images like Alpine don't include bash. Now, we're probably all guilty in one point or another, assuming that all Linux containers will have bash by default. But that isn't the case with lightweight containers like Alpine Linux. Of course, if you're using a Debian-based image, bash should work. But if you're not, what's your option? Well, you use sh instead. So for instance, if you were to create a new container and you try to dial into that using bash, and it was an Alpine image container, you're not going to get on very well with it. So what do we do? Okay, well, look what we got here. Let's create a new container. This is how I would create a container for Alpine Linux. So I'm running it interactive mode, I'm calling it test Alpine, and notice at the end I'm using sh to access this. And when I click run, I will be inside an interactive setup. Everything is working as suspected. I can then exit this. On the other hand, if I were to try and run that command and I would use bash, I'd be getting an error because bash does not exist. So how can I access that when there is no bash to use? Of course, I have to use sh, okay? So obviously it's already in use, so I can't run this again. What I could do is I could remove test Alpine. Then I can run that command again, and I go error. We're unable to do it because it isn't found in the path. Notice we're unable to execute that because bash is not there with Alpine. So all I'm trying to say is that make sure that the distro that you're using has bash if you're trying to run bash for interactive modes. Otherwise you can use sh and everything will work just fine. There's a simple mistake to make. It's easy to assume that all the Linux containers are going to have bash, but be doubly sure if you're running a lightweight one. And the final mistake is running docker system prune without understanding the risks. Okay, now it's a really easy command to run, docker system prune, and this is going to delete all unused images, or containers, or networks, and volumes. Now, the problem is, a lot of beginners might be expecting this to only remove stock containers, but it'll end up deleting important resources as well. Be very careful when using a command as destructive as this. Alternatively, what you might want to do is to run the following: Docker container prune. This will just clean up stock containers, okay? So if you do this, this is probably more what you're looking for. And if I were to click enter on this, do I want to remove all stock containers? I can then hit yes, and it will delete containers for me and reclaim some space. Everything is safe, and I haven't deleted all unused images, containers, networks, and volumes. So system prune does have its purposes, but be sure you want to use it. It may be that you want to get rid of stock containers, and container prune is exactly what you're looking for. So there we go. We've just covered 4 simple Docker mistakes that anybody can make. And they might seem small, but it's going to save you time, prevent errors, and essentially keep your Docker environment running smoothly. So whether you're debugging logs, stopping containers, or cleaning up disk space, understanding these commands and understanding how to use them properly, it can actually make a huge difference. It's one of those things, it's like learning to drive. Once you understand how everything works, you can do it with muscle memory. And it's the same with Docker commands. It's a really easy thing to learn how to use, but it's also an easy thing to learn how to use improperly, especially if you're just following along with someone who's just said, do this without explaining why. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.